My name's Chris Gobby. I'm head of what's called MData E, and I'm responsible for taking all of our network data and monetizing it. So I've spent many years kind of playing around with different data sources, figuring out where the value is, and then trying to develop new products, new insights, and new services. So what I'm going to talk to you today is about some of the learnings we've had from taking mobile data and trying to monetize it and how they can be applied in the world of the Internet of Things. There we go. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview about what I do, then go on to talk about kind of the challenges in the connected world and some opportunities there, and then finally give an example about the retail area. So first of all, a bit of overview about myself and what we do. So we are EE's the UK's fastest and biggest overall network. We've got Orange, T-Mobile and E, for those of you who don't know. And we're really about speed, innovating, doing new things, and we've got the biggest 4G network in the UK at present. So what I do inside EE is I work in this area called MData. We basically take all of our raw network data, which consists of everything from call records to web traffic to location information. Shortly, we'll be taking in potentially data from our machine-to-machine data as well, combining it all together, and then out of that, we kind of look at developing new applications, new insights, new products. And we're working across a number of areas, from sort of mobile strategy to m-commerce, so that's kind of helping people understand how to apply our learnings into their various retail environments, to things around logistics, understanding how people move around the country, where new train lines should be put, where new stations should be going in. And finally, we kind of work around powering and planning advertising. So these are kind of all the areas we're working on at the moment with our own data, but there's definitely some areas where the Internet of Things can start to add massive benefits into these areas as well, which I should talk through shortly. So here's just a case study we did earlier in the year, which shows kind of what we do, really. So I did a big study with Google around the Olympics last year, and essentially their challenge was, how are consumers using their mobile phone while they're at the Olympics? So what we did is we looked at all of our network data, and we could see what was going on inside the park. We picked up around 640,000 customers kind of visiting the Olympic Park over the time. 30% of those were using their mobile phone. We could see social networking was higher outside of the park rather than inside the park. So people kind of went along, viewed kind of the games, and then went to see what was going on social networking after the event. And then we also saw news-related sites were more popular inside the ground than being outside the ground. And what the graph shows here is just BBC usage. So we're looking at kind of how people use bbc.co.uk inside the park during the Super Saturday. And there's several different lines going on, but essentially after 8 p.m, we have Jessica Ennis, who won her heptathlon gold medal, and we see a big spike in BBC usage. So we're seeing straight away that consumers inside a stadium are kind of really interested in following other events going on. So that's one of our use cases. We've done lots of other studies around this, and we're trying to basically take different data sources and figure out how can they be applied, really. So there's applications here around kind of mobile strategy. So what should you be doing if you're developing new mobile products? There's applications here for cross-media advertising effectiveness, were customers using certain brands, and event planning. So for mobile and for kind of events, there's loads of applications there that we've kind of developed. So going on into the connected world, which is the main kind of topic of my talk today. So what kind of the challenges that we're facing when you talk about monetizing data? So the first challenge is really collecting data from multiple sources. As a mobile network, we're trying to collect data from, I think, it's about 25 different systems at the moment. They've all got different interfaces, different systems. It's a really big challenge. So just getting the data out of something is quite a big challenge, and especially as people are thinking about monetizing the Internet of Things, that's probably the first kind of hurdle to overcome. The second thing is around the cost of analysis versus the benefit. So I read some stat that the amount of data a car generates is around 10 gigabits per second. So just to try and get that data out of a car in real time, analyze it, is going to be is very expensive if you don't do it in the right way. So figuring out what is the optimum way to do it, and there's some technologies out there that can help with that. And I was chatting with someone last week around developing smart boilers, and they said the issue they've got, again, it's pumping out so much data. Actually, they're now just pushing out a serial number because it's too much data to go down the line. So they're not really optimizing, thinking about how they can get the data out. And the final idea is really, once you've got all this data out, you've figured out how to kind of process it a little bit, then how do you harness this data? How do you actually drive the value out of it? So what I've got here is a few solutions, really. So the first one is around, one thing I think that's definitely evolving is sort of using modular approaches and API frameworks. So there's a lot of companies out there that are kind of believing and pushing this, that if you develop an API interface and lots of APIs, you can start to interconnect lots of things. And I think that's quite a good ethos. ourselves with our mobile network data, we're a bit shut off from the outside world. It's hard for us to connect, say, our mobile web data or our location data with an outside data source. So if I wanted to, let someone develop an app that combines, say, trains with the weather with our mobile location data, we'd have to, transfer files. There's no APIs there. So I think using APIs is a really good way of connecting things together. Second thing to bear in mind is really there is, to get over these challenges of, what data should I take out, how should I take it out, there is a lot of big data technology out there that's very good at processing data at high speed. But the key thing I would say actually is experimentation and setting up a way you can get your data out to be experimented with, because probably the core of your business, if you're building the devices like we saw earlier, there's lots of data analysis obviously in the medical environments, but there's going to be lots of other areas where just getting data out of a device is going to be the first step. But analysing it, you're not really going to be interested in that. It's just, you want to get the data out there and share the data and things like that. So allowing people to experiment is really key. So making open source, using lots of the frameworks that are out there around big data solutions can really help. And then finally, I think that in terms of harnessing kind of the power of the data, everyone carries mobile phones, and we've already heard earlier some great examples around sort of how it's being used in healthcare. But the mobile device, I think, is one of the best ways to kind of surface that information back and can kind of use it as well. So when we're connecting either our cars or our homes or retail or advertising, I think the mobile is going to become a more and more central way of actually kind of integrating this data and surfacing it back either to consumer or to a business or however. So I think that's a really key thing to bear in mind. So once you've overcome these challenges, key question of today was, so how do you drive value out of this? What are kind of the different business models? So I think there's three areas really. First area is kind of the raw data. So you've developed a new product, it's pushing out loads of data. There's some revenue opportunities there, and probably the way we'll see that is go into what's called data aggregation. So there's lots of companies like the Experians, like CACI, Equifax, that are kind of, they take data, they aggregate it with other data sources, they pay a fee essentially for the data, and then you kind of, you make money out of providing data, and other people kind of, figure out what the use case is. The second level up is kind of analytics, which is sort of a consulting model. So once you've kind of pulled all your data together, you then start to think, actually, now what could be done with that? What kind of new solutions could I start to deliver? What kind of consultancy could be provided on top of that? And then finally, kind of the highest value, but the hardest to achieve is kind of scalable solutions. So almost taking all that data, providing it back as a service. So the healthcare examples there earlier, that's the perfect example. We've taken all the data, analysed it, and then providing it back as a software service. So I think that's kind of the different levels of the ecosystem. But the key thing really is to kind of understand that what's the place in the ecosystem you're trying to play for. There's plenty of value in each of these kind of levels, and it's not everyone chase a scalable solution. But actually, you can kind of if you're just kind of developing 3 or 4 different products, you probably want to ensure that it integrates to kind of a way of aggregating it. If you've maybe got 50 to 60, 100 different devices connecting, maybe you start to think about what new analytics could I apply? And then maybe on top of that, actually, you've got a whole ecosystem. What's that kind of software layer that you might want to apply on top to kind of expose the data back? So I think they're kind of the 3 key areas that to kind of think about, and try and understand where you're trying to aim in the ecosystem in terms of monetizing the data. So now I'm going to just talk about retail and kind of applying some of that logic, because we do a lot of work in retail, so I thought this would be quite a good one to talk through. So one thing we can do at the moment is I can map out all the retail stores in the UK, use our mobile network data, and understand the footfall that's going on in those stores, plus look at the mobile activity. So we can see how consumers kind of are shopping with their mobile, which will have some relevance to kind of machines in a second. And one thing we're really seeing, so if you look at the top left-hand graph, this is kind of the growth in mobile usage over the past 6 months. So the total web has increased in usage by about 4%. So the same people aren't really using their phones that much more. People's kind of maxed out. But we're seeing what they're doing is really changing. So beginning of last year, we saw social was the big thing, huge growth in social. That's reached capacity. Then we've seen gaming really grow a lot, and now we're seeing commerce grow massively. And websites that we're seeing big growth in are things like Gap, Banana Republic, Clark's. They're not really mobile optimized, but really what's happening is consumers are going into a retail environment. They're trying to collect more data. They want to find more information. They want to shop. They want to browse. And I think this is where the Internet of Things can really play a role, because people just want more information. They want to know more. And businesses also want to know more about their consumers. So there's a real kind of gap there in trying to figure out what do consumers want and how do you surface it back to them. So I've gone through a little example on this page, quite theoretical about how retail might evolve. So I've got some random images up here. Some of you might have seen the Tokyo, Korea Tesco store. So they had a virtual store. You kind of went along, shopped on the undergrounds. Perhaps when you go to stores, actually, you kind of sit still and all the items come to you is the middle one. Or maybe on the third one, there's just no items in the store and it's a completely virtual store. And which way it's going to go, no one really knows. But I think there's some key consumer issues which kind of are coming out where sort of internet things can really play a role. So when you go into the retail at the moment, there's advertising everywhere. Everyone's probably seen the Christmas adverts. Everyone's talking about the John Lewis adverts, what your favourites at the moment. So advertising is a big issue. And then when you get to the January sales, special offers are an issue. How do you get them to your consumers? How do you target them? And then when you've kind of actually got people in the shop and they're buying, big issues are the sizing of the clothes. People, will try on clothes. Does it fit? It's same size, medium, but actually different mediums are different things. It's a big challenge in the retail area. There's a lot of choice, which is great for a consumer, but actually that's another barrier they've got to overcome. And understanding value as well. Am I getting a good value? So people price check. They'll go onto other websites and they'll look to see what's the cheapest. So that's kind of consumer issues. And then finally, at the other end for the retailer, you've got stock control as a real issue as well. So managing all their stock and figuring out who's going to buy what, when they're going to come in. And then the cost of returns. So at the moment for online retailers with the likes of ASOS, they can kind of afford to do this kind of model and churn through it and afford the cost of returns. But smaller kind of boutiques and high-end fashion, they really struggle with kind of getting through this sort of cycle. And they waste a lot of money in this process. And I think kind of the Internet Things has a real role to play in this environment. So what I've kind of got here is sort of a connected store theory here. So imagine that you walk into a store, and when you go into the store, the first thing that happens is it's got pressure pads that kind of tell you when you walk into a store. Quite basic, but one of the big things retailers spend a lot of money on is just counting the number of people that go in the store. There's lots of money spent on it. It's quite inefficient. You don't know which way people are going or when they're coming in and out. Tesco's spend loads of money on kind of watching people through cameras and mapping out heat movements. I used to work on that a few years ago, and it works okay, but you've got to get cameras that point all over the place. Then you've got Wi-Fi solutions as well, which can kind of help to map out location movement. But I think just the real simple kind of pressure sensors kind of step one, person's come in the store. Next step, if we take, say, a Tesco's as an example, you go in and you go and buy something, you'll take it off the shelf. So again, pressure sensors, going to keep going with this theme. If you're taking it off the shelf, they're going to know immediately that's been taken off the shelf by the person that's gone through this route. So you could start to map out, really, kind of what people are going to what areas in the store. And I think that's it's a really simple kind of problem, but there's a real issue there that could be solved using sort of smart shelving or that kind of solution. And then another area as well is kind of, how do you get offers to consumers? How do you know what they're buying? Most stores now have got Wi-Fi connections, so kind of getting the data out of any potentially smart devices in there should be okay. Plus, I think a real interesting one to watch is Bluetooth Smart. It's the new low-energy Bluetooth technology that's coming with some of the smartphones now. And I think using that could be a really smart way of getting things to consumers. So you might have, say you go into Selfridges now. It's got the biggest shoe department in Europe, I think they're claiming. However, to try and find the shoes you want or know what they've got, you basically have to walk around everywhere. You might not have to find things, but if these are all smart kind of shoe sensor panels, you could then you could go on your phone, it could give you some recommendations based on the thing you like. It could really enhance your shopping experience. And there's lots of this smart retail that's trying to kind of bring to life, but I think it's not quite matched up yet. And then finally, kind of what this will give kind of retailers and consumers is a lot of new data sources. And from that, retailers will be able to push more via the mobile, understand in store how to really optimize things. And from a consumer point of view, they'll be able to make better choices and ultimately convert more. So you kind of will have a better customer experience. There's some research that's been done that between sort of 40 and 60% of people leave the store simply because they can't find what they want, even though it's in the store. And I think kind of using sort of building smarter retail environments, even if it's just as simple as counting things, that'll be a really, really good way of improving how retailers can manage their environment. And ultimately, this will really lend itself to kind of improving a customer experience. So people are going to come there, they're going to buy more. So that's just one example, and I think this can be applied to lots of areas where sort of taking the ability to sense things in different environments, taking that data together, and then really putting it back to a consumer or to a retailer is really an interesting thing. So just to summarise then, kind of my area is all around kind of mobile data, but we're now looking at machine data, kind of all different data sources. And really the key thing I think is to take that data and develop simple outputs and sort of develop better decisions for customers. So that's really what we're trying to do. And in the world of Internet of Things, I think it's understanding that consumer needs and then developing a product for it is a good place to start. There's lots of gaps that Internet of Things can really fill in. And I think really, if you're trying to monetize your data, then you've got to know where you fit in the ecosystem. Are you going for that full service, or do you just want to be part of the kind of aggregation layer, or somewhere in the middle? And once you've kind of identified that, you can set the goal and really kind of go for that. Thank you very much for all your time today. My name's Chris Gobby. I'm head of M Data. If you want to drop me any emails or catch up with me later, my email's on the slides. Thank you.